So last night's game, we are a tri-weekly email newsletter and a podcast, as well as we have reader-driven content on our website. And we cover sports for people who want to be able to talk about sports, but don't know a lot about sports. The barrier to entry into learning sports is kind of high. A lot of people don't have the time or the capacity to watch ESPN, and nor do they really care to. And that's what we cater to. We cater to those of you who want to be able to talk sports in a social situation or at the office, but don't really have time to dive into what's happening in the world of sports. And I guess the way we cover it is sort of sports meets pop culture. I want sports to be interesting. I want it to be something that the person who doesn't care at all, who is playing on the court or on the field, I want them to be able to join the conversation and talk about it still. So, for instance, today we talked about, to kick off Women's History Month, we talked about athletes' wives who bring home the bacon. Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Amy. How are you?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I actually wanted to say, how do you pronounce your last name?
Siegfried.
Siegfried.
Have you ever heard of Siegfried and Roy in Las Vegas?
No.
So that's what I tell people. It's like Siegfried and Roy in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. It's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the Playroom officially.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Anytime. And also, happy March and happy Women's History Month.
Thank you. Yes, happy March. Gosh, I can't believe we're already in March again.
Right? Like, time has gone so fast. It's already March. It was February just the other day.
I know.
Yeah. So
there we go.
Mm-hmm. There is so much for us to...
Where are you based at?
Oh, I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, I love Atlanta.
Oh, yeah. When last were you here?
Places. Pardon?
When last were you here?
I was there in September.
Oh, not too long ago.
Yeah, some dear friends of ours. Yeah, we're planning a meeting out in Lake Oconee.
Mm-hmm.
And some friends of ours from Singapore now live in Atlanta, and so we went to go visit them on our way out to Lake Oconee. So. Oh
wow! Hope you had a good time while you were out here.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Yeah, the weather is amazing too.
It's a great spot. I love Atlanta. Maybe not in the middle of the summer, but I love Atlanta. So.
Yeah. What about you? Where are you at?
Right now, I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay. What's the weather like?
I go between here and I'm from Las Vegas, so I go between, and that's where our business is based.
Okay.
And then I'm also going to school in Chicago, so I'm kind of all over the place.
Oh, nice. What's the weather like out there?
Today it's 70 degrees and sunny.
Oh, okay. That's pretty nice.
So I'll take it. We had the kind of ice storm a couple of weeks ago, and everybody got hit with all that weather.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to be back into sunshine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. We have so much to talk about today, so I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I know you have a lot of insight.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well. Thank you again for having me.
Anytime. I was also gonna jump right into it, and I've been seeing a lot on your profile about last night's game. I really want to know more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's start off with that and tell me more what that is about and what it is, and just give a little insight on what it actually brings to the table.
Sure.
Okay. Tell me more about the last night's game, what it means to you, because I know that's something that you've highlighted, and you also talked about your brother Scott, who created the last night's game to give your friends the same advantage, and it empowers readers to join the sports conversation, because I think sports is a big conversation all throughout, different platforms. So what's your take on it?
So last night's game, we are a tri-weekly email newsletter and a podcast, as well as we have reader-driven content on our website. And we cover sports for people who want to be able to talk about sports, but don't know a lot about sports. The barrier to entry into learning sports is kind of high. A lot of people don't have the time or the capacity to watch ESPN, and nor do they really care to. And that's what we cater to. We cater to those of you who want to be able to talk sports in a social situation or at the office, but don't really have time to dive into what's happening in the world of sports. And I guess the way we cover it is sort of sports meets pop culture. I want sports to be interesting. I want it to be something that the person who doesn't care at all, who is playing on the court or on the field, I want them to be able to join the conversation and talk about it still. So, for instance, today we talked about, to kick off Women's History Month, we talked about athletes' wives who bring home the bacon. So we talked about women like Victoria Beckham or Sierra, who have careers and have beautiful careers, and so they're so successful despite what their husbands do. They had their own careers first. And so we talk about things like that in the world of sports that still makes it conversational. And so my whole goal, or our whole goal, is that you have a little bit of something to lead into a conversation with, and then you can take that and spin it however you want. So for instance, let's say something's happening with the Chicago Cubs. You can say, you know what, I heard that the Chicago Cubs, they won the World Series. I love Chicago. Have you ever been there? Where do you like to go? Where do you like to eat? Where do you stay? What do you like to do? So you can take that little nugget of sports information and spin that into a conversation that someone might know a little bit more about. And so I look at it from the perspective of it's a great conversation starter. And that's what we do on our Instagram every day is conversation starters, because just that little nugget is all you need. I mean, that's why we read newspapers. Well, if you read newspapers, that's why you watch the news and you read your news online, because you want to be able to join in that conversation. You want to know what's going on. And so a little background on why we started last night's game. So I worked in Major League Baseball for a handful of years, and I started as an intern. And I brought one of my girlfriends to the ball game. And the guys were running off the field, and she said, well, why are they running off the field? And I said, well, they have 3 outs. And she said, what's an out? And not that there's anything wrong about not knowing anything about sports, because I don't judge the least bit. I ask the most sports questions of anybody I know. But I wanted her to be able to join that conversation, because what I realized is she's missing out on that dialogue that happens in the office between usually a bunch of guys about the world of sports. And so I wanted to figure out how to cover sports in a way that anyone could chime in. And so, as I mentioned, I was an intern, so I was probably about 20 at that point. And I called my brother and said, hey, I've got this great idea. How do we cover sports for women, especially, who want to be able to talk about sports with their sporty boyfriends or sporty office mates, or their sporty friends. I have plenty of girlfriends who know more about sports than I do. And he said, that's a really great idea, but I'm in high school. He was in high school at that point, and myself, I was working 80 hours a week. And he's like, when are we going to have time to do that? And obviously Squarespace and those other platforms that allow you to make a website, and the MailChimps of the world allow you to send emails, didn't exist back then when we came up with this idea. And so it was tabled for about 14 years. And then we resurrected it at one point when I moved back from Singapore. No one was hiring because it was Thanksgiving. And as we all know, hiring doesn't really happen between Thanksgiving and New Year's. So I had a couple of weeks to sort of, I wouldn't say twiddle my thumbs, but do something. And so we looked at this idea and said, what happens if we resurrect it and give it a shot now? We got a couple of weeks to roll it out. And so that's where it started, and here's where we are today. So
wow, that's a great story. And it started before. You're welcome. It started right before the digital phase began.
We'll call it the quote unquote digital, or things became so much easier, right? We obviously with email, but people weren't sending email blasts. You weren't getting 1,000 emails every morning about every shop you ever shopped on. And so it was before all of that really was mainstream. And so that wasn't an opportunity for us at that point. And so it worked itself out the way it was supposed to.
That's
allowed
great.
me to have a career of about 15 more years of experience to dump into the business before we started it. So.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And because we're talking about now and how it started then, have you had the same loyal fans and the same loyal customers and the same loyal community before and after, and also during that phase that probably you were on a hiatus? You know, how has the response been in terms of creating that connection?
I think it's been really great. It's been interesting to see, when we started, we didn't really, contrary to what we probably should have done, we didn't have a target market set. We started off with an email link that went out, and it went out to all of our family and friends that they clicked and then went to the website, and that had sort of the write-up for the day.
Yeah.
And that has since morphed to being a much more female-oriented audience. And what I love is we have people who've been around since the very beginning, and we have new people who we pick up all the time that I get great notes from of how that's helped them and how they enjoy the conversation with their husbands. I had one today when we talked about the athletes' wives who bring home the bacon. We had one today that she was just super excited that we were talking about designers she knew and people that she knew, and tying that all in together makes it really approachable. And so it's been really, for us, the challenge is continuing to make content relevant. Obviously, that's the challenge for everyone.
Yeah.
But we find all these nuggets, and those shout outs from people are huge inspirations for us to keep going. And so that's what I really enjoy, that is you have those fans who have been around since the beginning, and those are some of our friends that I rely on. I'll text and say, do you like this topic or this topic better? Or they'll send me stuff and say, I think you should write about this because I'm curious. And so it's great to hear from everyone from who's been around from the beginning to new people, to hear what they also want to learn, because like someone approached me once and said, I want to learn what I need to know to go to a golf tournament. A lot of charity golf tournaments happen. What do I need? What are the basics that I need to know? What do I need not to do? What do I need to wear? Kind of give me some basics about golf so I behave myself but can still ask questions and learn. And so it's been interesting just to see how people take that into their everyday life.
Wow, that's amazing, because you're kind of creating a tribe, even if you didn't expect to make one. It's like a community that serves you as you serve them better, because it's not just, oh, check out this baseball match, check out this amazing league. It's more so, what do you want to hear and what do you want us to tell you more of, so that we can be on the same page and speak the same language, because it's all about feedback.
Exactly. And it's all about, we want to make it work for you, because that's the whole point.
Right.
And so I think it's been really fun to see that and see that conversation happen.
That's amazing. And even with your background, the stories that I've been able to read, it's so inspiring, because you have, you're getting your MBA, you're raising a family, you're running a business. Those are three things that somebody would say, okay, I'm going to take 2 years to do my master's. I'm going to take some time to run a business before I think about a family. But you're doing them all together. And that's highly commendable. How do you, keep your sanity? Let me actually ask you that. How do you keep your sanity? Because it can get crazy right from the home, to leave to a business front, to go to a game, and then you have to still go back to school and then come back right there and then. So how do you train yourself to not go crazy or just go gaga?
Well, some days are better than others. I have to say that much. It's taking little pieces and little chunks of it off at a time. And what I really love for me about school is I go to school in Chicago, so I fly in every other weekend and spend time with my classmates there, which allows me to compartmentalize my school a little bit. So I get to enjoy and make those relationships there in Chicago, then I fly home. And what I like about that is I get that chance to separate from and learn there, where I'm not having to worry about changing diapers and that kind of stuff. You never leave the job at home. That always comes with you everywhere you go. And right. I've been known to work in the back of the classroom. But to be honest, it truly is just figuring out what is priority. And there's my son goes to school 5 days a week. And for me, he's 2.5. So he goes to school 5 days a week. But for me, that allows me to get a lot of my work done during the day. And then when I pick him up from school, I have that little dose of time with him where I can be mom, and then can step back after I put him to bed, and I can do schoolwork and real work. And so it's that trying to find those times where I can be there for him when I can, and that my job allows me to do that. So I can get up early and work before he gets up. I can work when he's at school, and so it works out well. That I've just figured out a system that works for us. Yeah. And there's things like, takeout happens sometimes. Sometimes we're going to stop and pick up Chick-fil-A for dinner, because guess what? That is just the way life happens. And right. I have a really very supportive husband who also works full-time, but it's actually worked out really well, because he used to travel a ton for work, and with COVID, he's clearly not traveling hardly at all. And so that has really helped keep the balance a little bit better in our family too, because he's able to stay with him on the weekends when I'm gone for school. And so that gives them some quality time together as well. So, to be quite honest, we just flex and make it all work. Sometimes sleep is a little hard to come by, but I'm also trying to prioritize that, because I realize that if I'm not healthy and I don't feed myself with some sleep, then I'm not going to be productive either. So there's no rhyme or reason. It's half the time it's kind of feels like a mess and a tornado, but we figure it out just like everybody else. And especially I think of the families who are at home with two working parents and their kids are still not back in school from COVID, and it's a challenge. I mean, the couple of months we spent with him out of school, it was tough. It was really tough because he's little. He doesn't understand what it's like to he needs attention. He doesn't understand what you're doing on your computer. He wants you to play with him.
Right.
And so we have that benefit where I wasn't having to also teach him at school, but he also didn't understand what was going on. So we've just fluxed like everybody else and figured it out.
Do you think that this, especially because now it's March, so around this time last year was really getting terrible. Do you think that between now and last year, there has been more family time and more connection than ever because of our crazy schedules, despite the fact that we are still on Zoom and we still have things to deadline and meet? Do you think it has created a better connection, or do you think it's just made things just go the way it's supposed to go whenever it's supposed to go to?
I remember March last year, and we were talking to my brother and saying, okay, well, let's keep tabs on this. And then they canceled March Madness, the basketball tournament. And we both went, oh, okay, this is a big deal. We need to really keep it together. And that was a challenge in its own right because there were no live sports. So when you're a sports company that covers sports, we definitely had to get creative, which was interesting. But it was fun because we were allowed to get creative and not cover actual sports. We were able to, actual like scores and things like that. We were actually able to get creative and cover fun, different topics. But in terms of family time, I think it gave us more time together, which is something we didn't have. It's taught us to slow down. We're big at our house on eating dinner together, and that allowed us to do that. It allowed us to take a break. Nobody was traveling quite as much. It allowed us to sort of appreciate the quiet moments and the quiet time playing outside and those kinds of things like that I don't think we always slowed down enough to step back and appreciate how great it was just to have a chance to spend an hour outside together in the front yard. And those kinds of things are invaluable. And I think for, like I said, my husband who traveled a lot, it's a great opportunity for him to be involved in our son's life when he was probably going to be gone a lot.
Yeah.
And now that they're together when I'm gone, they get their father-son time as well. So I truly think that it's given us all a chance to grow together. A lot of parents I talk to and a lot of just individuals I talk to, there's a lot of, obviously we've all had an extreme amount of challenges being at home, but those challenges also equal some other great quality times and time to grow together. So would you think the same thing from your perspective as well?
Oh yeah, most definitely. And it's actually amazing that it happened I would say in a disguise in terms of family time and keeping things close, because last year was the year that I also ended up proposing, and it's like that was a huge moment for me.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Because I was really, really thinking about family time, business, career. Where am I going to go next? Because everybody's on edge, everyone's on the fence. I wanted to do something that's actually monumental for my career so that I'm able to pivot off that and create something that's valuable to my society. So being in that space made me to sit back, like you said, slow down, think about exactly why I'm doing this, who am I doing this for, and where am I going right after this. So it made me so focused and honed in on my talents, on my skills, on my actual being around here. And it just created a whole new path for me. So I think that path to discovery is what I think everybody has come to find, because think about it. A lot of new businesses have been created. A lot of businesses have been lost at the same time. But if you think about the opportunities and you think about the advantages, they weigh out more than the negative, because now you can be able to really focus and hone in and say, hey, I used to spend 6 hours doing this because I was required to. Now I can spend 3 hours and focus on the other 3 hours to elevate myself. So it has this kind of good and bad. It's like good doctor, bad doctor kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's really, really helped as well. So that has brought a lot of innovation, a lot of creativity, and most definitely a lot of time to actually care about, your values. So Even for you, when you mentioned sports, one of the episodes that we had on this We Don't Play podcast station was his name is Ben Pfefferman, and he's in Canada, he's in Toronto. And he was talking about esports, and that was the second time I got to hear about esports, and he really broke it down because I was not sure about what esports was. And people would be like, esports, is that PlayStation games? No, it's not. People would think about all those things. So for you, when you said that you had to be creative, was there any virtual component that would probably have an esports element to it, or are they completely two different things when you think about sports and the industry?
It's truly, I mean, esports is to me so absolutely fascinating. As I mentioned to you before we started it, I'm from Las Vegas, and so Las Vegas has embraced the esports element. They've built an arena for esports. And for me, it was something I didn't know a lot about, and we dove into it. And I find it fascinating. I think it was a maybe Mortal Kombat championship, and this was obviously pre-COVID. There were 40,000 people in the arena, and there were two guys sitting at their consoles, essentially playing video games, which seems so. For those of us who don't watch, it's not our thing, and we're not familiar with it. It seems weird and it seems boring. It was fascinating. My husband and I sat there and we're watching it on ESPN, and I mean, we weren't even talking because it was just so interesting to watch this and watch how fast and their reaction. I mean, it was incredible. And that's the one thing we did end up covering. We have done some coverage of esports, and it's so interesting because it's a massively growing industry. And that's one thing I find fascinating too, is a lot of sports, you're looking at baseball and NASCAR, they're struggling. Some of these sports are really struggling. And they're not growing like the NFL, they're not growing like the NBA. I mean, soccer is obviously, as we've probably all heard, is growing leaps and bounds in the US, but esports is out of control. And I'm going to pull this up so I can and I'll send you this link to the write-up we did on esports.
Okay.
But it's fascinating. I mean, the growth rate, and I'm going to pull these numbers up real quick because I don't want to screw them up, but the number of people across the world that watch these various, I'll call them matchups, if you will, you're talking a couple 100,000 people watching one matchup. These numbers are as of April 2020, so these are last year, but 6.6 billion hours of esports videos were watched worldwide last year.
Whoa.
I mean, that's insane when you really think about that. And wow. We broke it down because for the newbie, there's PC, which is computer or console, like an Xbox, and those are different leagues and different tournaments. It's truly fascinating, and that these players, these athletes, because truly, I can't imagine what your hands feel like at the end of one of these
right.
But you're seeing, I mean, they're athletes, and you're seeing teams like the NBA, who have the NBA 2K League, and how they're embracing this growth, this massive growth, and they're going with it. I mean, NASCAR, I don't know if you remember, but NASCAR, when we were off during COVID, they did a whole E-Series, an iRacing Pro Invitational Series, where they raced in their own homes, but they aired it like it was an actual race. So it's fascinating to see what they put together for this, and how people this is just the tip of the ice. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Like, we haven't even started on what this could be and the massive growth that we could realize in the US especially.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I see that it's becoming a trend too, because there's Twitch now, and people never used to know what it was, and now it's becoming more and more familiar. But also, if you think about the traditional sports system, when it comes to like buying a ticket, going to a stadium, experiencing, feeling like you're part of the game, because like in soccer, for example, I'm a Manchester City fan, and I know that there's so much thrill when you're on stage, you're thinking about, oh, this player is about to score. You have all these amazing moments. But now, because of COVID, you look at the same sports arena and you don't see people there. So are the stadiums losing because of the ticketing and the pricing points and the breaking even? Of course, they have staff to pay. So there's so many logistics that come into play when you think about behind the scenes of just the sports arena. So Did that have a shift, or did they have to get creative to actually create more space to elevate and leverage on, the opportunities?
Well, it's so one of the things that to me really heightened that is, so you're seeing some of these stadiums open up and bring in a handful of fans, whatever that might be, a couple thousand fans, depending on where the sport and where they're located. And I would assume that, based on what I know, that they're probably losing money because you're still having to pay your concession workers, you're still having to pay your ushers and all those folks, but you're not obviously operating anywhere near capacity. So you're still employing everyone to bring them in, but it's fans in the stands. It's what people want, right? I think we're at that point where players are desperate for the fan participation. It is kind of funny when you talk to some of these, or you hear from some of these players, what it's like to have less fans in the stands, because everyone's voice echoes. So that person that might harass you and heckle you before was covered up by everybody else. Now you can hear that lady in row 52
right,
screaming at you, telling you you stink, right? And so that's kind of a funny thing. It's one of the things that kind of struck me is, so during the Super Bowl, Pepsi and Coke both pulled back any commercials that they had. And there were multiple things that I've read about it, but one that I read about that was, we have to imagine their product consumption with no stadiums, it's got to be so low, right? On a commercial capacity, restaurants aren't open, stadiums aren't operating. And so you look at just even that side of it, that hurt their bottom line in a significant way. And that was one of the reasons I read that they were not doing Super Bowl commercials, was because it was a choice between laying people off or keeping them there and not doing a Super Bowl commercial. So you look at just the downward trend of how that's not having a games at a stadium impacts the local community around it, the mom and pop shop on the corner that sells beer, the guy who sells hot dogs out front. That kind of thing has been really, it's sad to see, but I'm hopeful that, we're starting to see they're going to have fans at March Madness this year at some of the tournament spaces.
Nice.
So we'll see how that works. And little by little, we'll start taking back in a safe way. And they've done well, and I haven't seen any red flags for any of the events like the Super Bowl where they brought in 22,000 people into Florida for that. So hopefully we'll get back to whatever normal looks like.
Right.
Quote, normal, we'll call it.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's a great point that you mentioned, because now it's where people are getting more innovative with their creation and understanding that, hey, if I'm not able to do this with 10 people on ground, I could do the same thing with 100 people online or virtually. So now you're able to actually expand, and then when everything gets back to normal, hopefully, prayerfully, we're able to get back in order and things are able to just get back to the way it was. And then maybe now you can even have a better stand because you have two audiences, both virtual and also traditional. So I think it's like a give take, right? So I think it's good in a way, but also like if you don't see the opportunity and fall back, then that's on you. But most people, I think, have been able to wake up and smell the coffee.
Was it interesting to see them? Excuse me.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, it was interesting to see too that during the election you saw a lot of these facilities that were normally booked are wide open, so they've used those as polling places.
Yeah.
And so it is cool to see what they've done and attempted to do to fill in the blanks. I know there's quite a few that are now COVID vaccine locations or COVID testing. And so whatever you can do to utilize and maximize that giant space that you have, more power to you.
Exactly. And even speaking about entrepreneurship, because that's where the focus is, especially when it comes to creating jobs and, being in the know-how, how would you say that your entrepreneurial spirit has created this impact for your community around you, for your business? And most definitely, what kind of advice would you share with hopeful entrepreneurs that are really looking for an edge? They're probably still thinking, what can I do with my time? Not everyone has really figured it out yet. So how can you let them know that, hey, it's not over yet? What can they be able to do today that can help them for tomorrow?
That's a really great question. I would say the biggest thing would be just to check out, see what's out there. And so say you have an idea, whatever that might be, see what's out there and see how you can differentiate yourself. Just because for us we wanted to cover sports in a way that anyone could understand them. We're not specifically covering women's sports. We're not specifically covering baseball or certain regions of the country. We're bringing everyone when it comes to that kind of stuff. And for us, that was our differentiator. There are people who cover women-only sports for women. There are people who cover only this region, or ESPN who covers everybody, primarily sort of your mainstream sports. But how is that different? And so the biggest thing that I would say, and what I've learned throughout my career, is the differentiator. What makes you different? If you have an idea to make the next slushie, what makes yours different? Does yours, we've seen people put alcohol in them. We've seen people do the sugar-free kind. We've seen people do keto-friendly, whatever that might be. Find your niche that makes you different.
Yeah.
I think that is the biggest thing that I've seen, and I learned that early on in my career. So when I worked for the Diamondbacks, we had a team foundation, and there was a grant process where nonprofit organizations from across the state would write in and request grant money for different projects. And what I learned starting from that was I'd read a couple hundred applications, and how many of them were the same. And that's what always blew my mind, is you're serving the same area, the same location, but you're doing the exact same thing. Either why aren't you working together, or why aren't you doing something different? Because someone's already doing this. And there's enough to go around in this world that I think that there's a huge opportunity to differentiate yourself, and that's going to be the key to the success of what your business could be or might be. And if you want it, somebody else wants it. And I've learned that in school, is if I have a question, somebody else probably has that question, no matter how stupid I feel asking it, because I'm the first one in a global finance class to say, I don't understand what this Excel spreadsheet means. I don't understand what these numbers mean. And somebody else inevitably always has that same question. And so same with the product. If you want it, chances are someone else does too. It's a matter of researching and seeing what's out there. And I think I learned that partially. I'm a third generation entrepreneur. My grandfather and my dad were both mechanics and owned their own garage. And some of the tactics, I just finished a negotiation class in school, and I thought, well, heck, my dad could teach this negotiation class, because the things that as a small business owner you have to do and you have to finagle, it's so funny. And I mean, it's true, but it's the things that used to embarrass me as a kid. We'd go buy a piece of furniture and my dad would be haggling over, are they going to deliver it for free or whatever it might be. But those are all things that we need in life, and we all need to make happen. And so it was just really funny that some of those things that now resonate with me as an adult, that I saw or I learned as a child. And I don't know, I think there's a huge opportunity for people to continue to grow in the market that we live in. We have Etsy, we have all these different great platforms that allow us to Shopify, that allow us to make our own stores and sell our own things. And there's no time like the present to step out and do your own consulting business. If you have a talent, do it. I mean, I did that. So I was laid off from a job. This is probably 10 years ago or so. I was laid off, but I had people, while I was working for this corporation, people were saying to me, I wish I could afford to hire you, because I really like you to help me with events and with my marketing. And so when I got laid off, I went to those people and said, hey, what does this look like to work together? Two or three of you have asked me to help with different things. How can we make this a business, and I can then sustain myself, and you can get the help that you need for a price point that makes sense? And so that's what we did. And we sort of threw it together. And I mean, I flew by the seat of my pants. I mean, it was one of those, I lived in Phoenix at the point, and downtown Phoenix offered a grant for an attorney to help you file the paperwork to get your limited partnership. I mean, it was all these things that they needed to establish a business, and they were going to give it to you if you just looked for it. So those opportunities exist everywhere. They really, truly do. There's cities now paying entrepreneurs or remote workers to move there to work and hopefully stay. And so there are so many opportunities if you're willing to look for them and you're willing to give it a go. I mean, so much about, I think you could probably attest to this as well, about doing what we do is saying yes and just figuring it out. I think that's part of it is, when you start a business, you are everything. You're the attorney, you're the marketing person, you're the social media person, you're the face of the franchise, all those things. And you just have to figure it out. And you rely on the internet is a wonderful, blessed thing that will help you do some of those things. But just be willing to have that gumption of just saying, okay, yep, you know what? We're going to take on an advertiser. sure, we'll figure out what that looks like. We'll piece it together in the back end. No one will know any different.
Right.
And so I think those things are really just having that. I think that's the entrepreneurial spirit that people talk about, is truly having that gumption of just going, all right, hold on to your hats. Here we go.
Exactly. And when you wear a lot of hats, I feel like you learn better, and especially if it's your first, second, third year, because it usually says that when you have a business, it takes about 3 years to break even if you're really, really focused on your business plan. And with doing that consistently, you're actually growing, because when you're hiring someone, you're trying to hire someone that's better than you so that you can do less of that. Not that, oh, you need a job. All right, I'll teach you how to do this. No, it's like, this is a training curve. This is exactly what I want you to do. But in the midst of all that, there's relationship building. There's working ethics. There's so many objectives that you have to cover, and not just, oh, you have a good resume, or you have a great CV, or you went to Harvard. There's so many components, your soft skills, your hard skills. You have to think about all those things. So when you're building relationships with people, especially in the entrepreneurial world, how does someone maintain those long-lasting relationships and don't think of give, take? How do they sustain themselves and state that, okay, this is exactly what I want to do. This is the relationship I want to build. So how am I thinking about importance for building relationships rather than just cultivating, short, temporary forevers? How do you manage that?
That's a great question. So by nature, I'm a connector. That's what I love to do. I love to connect people and say, hey, you need to listen to this new podcast. You need to meet this person, whatever that might be. I'm not real strong on the love connection, so that's maybe why I'm not a matchmaker. But, I think that's part of it is understanding that there's always something you can give. And it may not be financially. It may just be, I was talking to someone, my son's pediatrician the other day, and he was talking about how he does the social media for his practice. And he just figured out what a story is and all those different things on Instagram. And I said, well, if I can help you, just holler, because sometimes having that person to ask that question to and just making yourself available is huge. But I would also say that, I think you really do need to deposit to withdrawal, if you will.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that I've worked with a lot of different vendors. In the beginning, I was really hesitant to spend any money. So we did everything ourselves. And that was slightly painful. But like you said, we learned a lot. And I think some of those skill sets from my career really did benefit me in building what we did. But I think too, like you say, when you're small, whoever you bring in has to check a lot of those boxes, because they are maybe not just your marketing person or helping you do social media, but you're using them as a litmus, right? You're checking things against them. You're all these things. You have to have the right personality, because if you're not a personality fit, I've got to work with you all day long. That's going to be really hard for me to fake that. And so I will say we've done some relationships that have been great. Some people we've hired haven't gone quite as well. And so I think it's just learning what you need and being willing to ask for it as well, and setting those expectations up front. I think that is a huge piece of that setting those expectations and what you need from them, what you need reporting out, what you need financially, whatever that deal might look like. That is a huge piece of that. And in the beginning, I think I was much more intimidated to ask that, but then realized that I'm the client, and the best way we are successful is if we both communicate with each other openly.
Yeah.
And so if I didn't like something, I said so. And it's really funny, because from when we first started, I see that I was doing 5 or 6 revisions of something. And now we're working with a graphic designer that I did 1 revision, because I'm communicating what I want more. She's also talented in asking the right questions, but I'm giving her a lot of what I want up front versus thinking, oh yeah, I forgot about this. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. I'm giving that all to her now, and we're able to be much more efficient, because we're both in a good spot in what we're doing, and I know what to ask for now at this point. And so I think that's a whole piece of that is truly being transparent. I mean, that's my biggest thing is, when I do interviews like this, I say there's no question off the table, because someone out there has it. Someone is intimidated by entrepreneurship or starting a family and having a business. I can't tell you how many people had offhanded comments about me having a baby and having a business as a baby, and how I was going to do both. And so I think it's to understand that people need to be open and honest, and that is a huge piece of success, because we see so much on Instagram and in social media that looks beautiful and buttoned up, and it's really not that way. And we've had our fan base and our people who follow us on social, they've asked for more behind the scenes, which is really funny for me because I have no desire to be some sort of influencer, but people have asked questions and want to see behind the scenes and want to see what's happening. And I think that's all important because it showcases that you are a real human. There are challenges. There are things that don't go well. You fail at things.
Yeah.
I failed at plenty of things. And so I think the transparency is a huge piece of that, and just realizing that you have a lot to offer, but someone has a lot to offer to you.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for it, and don't ask for help.
Exactly. And I think even I see that on Clubhouse too. I'm hosting rooms just on Pinterest marketing because I just launched a mastermind course on Pinterest marketing and how to scale with your business, especially now that people are really trying to recover financially in their business. So we actually even got to see, because I have a co-host as well. Her name is Kate. And we talked about this even last night, that some people are just scared to ask questions, not because they don't know, but because they don't have that self-confidence within themselves to actually speak out. And I see that a lot going on Clubhouse already. And it's like, why can't you speak out? But sometimes it's that self-reliance and that self-awareness that, hey, I have something that I can bring to the world and I can actually make a difference. So I think that's an area of focus that people need to really think about and grow with, because once you're able to know that, hey, I'm really good at this, and my dad told me I'm good, my sister told me I'm good, my best friend told me I'm good, my husband told me I'm good, I should feel some type of way. But I also think that people also look for that instant gratification, and if they only get 3 likes, that's it. Just last night, Instagram, they had a glitch in the like system and things just went crazy. The internet went wild last night. So it's like when people see these things, I feel like it's much more beneficial to them to create that impression and actually learn the curve instead of just being part of the society that's just falling apart and saying, oh, this is a trend. Okay, I'm going to follow it. They should be the trend and not follow the trend.
Absolutely. And like I said, if you have a question and you're in a Clubhouse, set up a Clubhouse meeting. I don't even know what to call it. Clubhouse meeting, and then you ask it because someone else has that question.
Yeah.
And someone else might not be bold enough to ask. And so ask it. If you have a business idea, do it. I think there's so many opportunities out there. And, it's interesting. I met with a girl a couple months ago who runs an incubator out of New York. And her whole thing is she doesn't look for businesses that could exit. So she's not looking for businesses that are the next Facebook and all of those. Those are great, and if those come along, fantastic. But she said not everyone's made to exit. Not everyone's meant to be bought out by a bigger company.
Yeah.
Some people are meant to thrive in their own zone, and that's all they need, and they can be perfectly successful in that space. Not everyone's meant to be the next Facebook. And so I found that as a really interesting and refreshing change of pace, because I think as a business owner, people push you and, well, what's your next strategy? What's your strategy? What's your exit? What's your exit? What does that look like? And it's like, well, sometimes it's okay to be in your own space and be in your own lane and be successful and make a good living and do what you want to do and not have to worry about being bought out by whatever the next big thing is. So I really enjoyed that kind of refreshing perspective of not everybody's made to go there. Not everyone's business is made to go to that route.
Yeah.
So that's okay. You don't have to be Whitney from Bumble. That's okay.
Right.
And that does not mean you're not successful. You can be absolutely superiorly successful doing what you do in the space that you do it, in the lane that you do it in.
Exactly. That's a great point to mention, because once you're able to speak out, someone somewhere is going to take in to what you're saying, and you're going to be able to actually bring light to someone's business, either in form of any fashion. It can be able to actually help that person succeed, grow, become better, and just learn the way and the curve, because not everyone started like you're a 3rd generation entrepreneur. some people that are first generation entrepreneurs probably have no clue what this actually means to just sleep without, getting a sale or getting a closed deal. And then you have to still wake up the next morning and do the same thing. So it's that tenacity that really, really keeps you in check. And also some other, business entrepreneurs they either dropped out or they have amazing school degrees. There are different tiers because people say, oh, if you're an entrepreneur, there's this notion that if you're an entrepreneur, it's like, okay, you don't really want to work. You want to just be by yourself and be your own boss. And that's not really true, because for me, like, for example, I'm actually completing my second master's degree program, my MBA. And it's really, really encouraging to also hear that you're also, doing that, especially with the level and the profession that you're in right now. So how does that affect, and I also want to know this too from your business perspective, how does having a master's degree affect your business, and how does that impact your business, either positively or negatively? It could be definitely positively, but there's some pros and cons to everything. And of course, people have SWOT analysis, people have pest analysis, and just understanding exactly what they're trying to do with their business. So how has that experience been like for you?
I didn't go back to school to really benefit the business. This was something I always wanted to do. I have a journalism degree, and that involves zero math, or limited math, I should say. And so for me, when my husband and I got married, we started doing a little bit of investing in different things. And so I'm looking at financials and different things like that I didn't fully understand. And I felt like that was a spot that I was lacking. We had the business, and so I was growing that and trying to understand what I needed to do. And for me, the financial side of things, when it came down to either looking at a business or at my own, it was the understanding. I really have no desire to go be a CFO for a global company. That is not going to ever be in my wheelhouse, or be my own attorney. Also not going to be in my wheelhouse. But I think for me, it's the understanding of what's happening. It's feeling like I have a seat at the table. It arms me with the confidence, kind of like we talked about, arms me with that confidence that I need to sit down and review something and truly understand it and ask the right questions. Like I said, I'm not going to go be my own tax accountant, but I can ask my tax accountant the right questions.
Right.
And I think that to me is huge. And I would also say, from a marketing perspective, and what I've taken out of my MBA from a marketing perspective, is not only the colleagues that have chimed in and offered to help on things or given feedback or just been a go-to for someone to review something, but it's some of the strategic thinking and the things that we're kind of doing now that I'm winding down to the end of my degree, is diving into it and looking at things from a different perspective. One of the challenges we have is that Scott and I both come from the same upbringing. So we don't necessarily always have the same thought process, or we have the same thought process. We don't think differently on a lot of things because we have that same background. Now, he's a male who does different things than I do, and we're totally different humans. And so we bring that different perspective from that point. But because we have the same background, we don't always think differently. And that, I think, is such a valuable piece of a business, is to bring people in who think differently than you do. And that is a huge thing when you think about hiring a team, is we're so apt to hire people who are just like us because it's easy to get along with them. We get their ideas, all these things. But bringing in that person who maybe pushes your buttons a little bit, and maybe makes you slightly uncomfortable and asks questions that make you slightly uncomfortable, that person is not a bad hire. That person might be what you need to push you into that next level.
Yeah.
And that's what I've realized about myself, is I don't operate well as a one-man show. I need that other person to bounce ideas off of. I like to have that different perspective, and that's what I really enjoy. That's what COVID gave to us, because Scott works a full-time job elsewhere, and so he was in the hospitality industry and was laid off, or put on. He was not laid off. He was what's the word I'm looking for? Anyways, he was not working for a couple months, and totally lost my train of thought on that. Sorry, but it gave us a chance to dive in and work together on a daily basis. And so I now had this sounding board, and he had a sounding board that we could bounce ideas off of each other, which we didn't really have before. We didn't have some of the structure we have in place now. But because of COVID, we had that chance to do that.
Yeah.
And so that was huge that we were able to do that. And I think that's part of what makes you successful, is being open to ideas. And that's what a degree for me gives me. And that's why I went back to an executive program, because I had worked a long time And I wanted people who had also had a lot of work experience that we could combine our ideas together and learn from each other. And that's really what I get the most out of my class, is that time together with my classmates, where I'm learning way more from them than I probably am from a professor. We won't tell our professors that, but I'm learning more from them than I am my professors.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you probably have a similar experience when it comes to that too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Even with my final class right now that I'm on about corporate finance, we've had no in lectures, we've had no virtual class. It's all research. And you realize, you're like, oh man, am I supposed to do this by myself? I don't even have my own colleagues around. I have to call them. I have to do this by myself. So it just shows you that when you're out there in the business world, sometimes you may need to be by yourself. Sometimes you may need to figure it out on your own. But that doesn't mean that they're not an arm's length away. That doesn't mean that they're not a call away. But it just shows you that your responsibility is entirely upon you to make that decision and say, hey, if I really want to make this grade, if I want to really make this cut, if I want to really, really make this impact, then I have to put my 110% in. And that's one of the things that Go ahead.
I say you probably figured out your strengths and weaknesses too through this program, where all of a sudden I myself am like, okay, I know I need someone to help me with this. I need someone to break it down like this. This is how I learn. And I'm sure you've found the same thing, is that will benefit you in your career as you move forward, because you know your limitations, and there's nothing wrong with having limitations. No one's perfect.
Yeah.
But you know how to handle them now and how to address them and what to ask for.
Exactly. And it also kind of gives you that leadership mentality, because now you're becoming more so one with yourself and understanding that, hey, I need help with this. So this is where I'm going to reach out, and know exactly what your boundaries are as well, especially in a business society. So that's a really great point you mentioned there. Before we go, there are two things that I want us to talk about really quickly, because they're so exciting, and I saved this for the last part. The first one is, you have a fun fact that you traveled the world, or you flew the world in about 58 hours and 37 minutes by living internationally and being a master of small talk, bringing people together. And to me, we have 24 hours and you did 58. Tell me more about that, and how did that affect your business, your career, and especially, family and business life? How did that balance come in? Because we already talked about your sanity and how you're able to control that, but traveling, that's a whole different ball game.
So, there are two sort of separate pieces. So the flying around the world in 58 hours is the best idea we ever had that I'll never do again. And I got laid off from the job, as I had mentioned earlier. And my husband wanted to utilize, he was actually just my boyfriend at the time, wanted to wipe out some airline miles, because he wanted to switch over to a different airline alliance for his work travel. And so he said, hey, I've always wanted to know how fast I could go around the world. And when I'm 30, and when I'm 60, I want to see how slow I can go around the world. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting concept. My husband has these very weird ideas sometimes. And so I started working on it. I found somebody who worked for, was it America West at that point? US Airways at that point. And we started working through things, and we managed to put together an itinerary that flew us from Phoenix to, where'd we go? Phoenix to Chicago, Chicago to Frankfurt, Frankfurt to Tokyo, Tokyo to Seattle, Seattle to Phoenix.
Wow.
And it was awful in the sense that you only slept on the plane. So you have all these time zone changes. You're only sleeping on the plane, which is terrible sleep, as we all know who's ever slept on a plane. But it was so fascinating, because I had never been to Japan. I'd never been to Germany at that point. And so it was great that we spent, the whole rule was you had to leave the airport, go have a beer, write a postcard, and come back. So in most of those cities, those two big cities, we had about 8 hours.
Okay.
So we hired a driver to pick us up, show us the sights. We'd go, have a beer, we'd go see the sights, we'd go do something, come back to the airport, shower at the airport, get back on the plane. And it was a great way to see different things and different cultures, and such a fulfilling experience, because you're in all these different cultures within hours of each other. But I can tell you, I was so wiped out when we got back that it was brutal, but it was amazing. So I'm hoping that I'm still around for when he's 60, in the slowest way we can go around the world and spend some time in actual places. But
yeah.
About 5 years ago, we moved back from living internationally. So we lived overseas in Singapore for a couple of years, and that was just the most phenomenal experience. I encourage everyone, if you have a chance to live outside the US, even if it's for a few weeks, a few months, to do so, because it really makes you appreciate what we have here in the States. It makes you realize what we could do better. It also just makes you realize that everyone around the world is so similar. We all want the same things. We all want our families to be happy. We all want to have food on our tables. We want to have a roof over our heads. That is the fundamental things, and what everyone wants in the world is pretty much the same, no matter where you're from, no matter what you look like, and what language you speak, what religion you believe in. And that to me was the foundation of the basis of what I took away from that. Is there are a lot of challenges, and you really learn a lot about yourself doing that, but you really learn how small the world truly is.
Yeah, especially with the internet going on nowadays, you can really, think about, oh, wow, you were there yesterday, now you're here now. Wow. So it feels like a global village now. And there's so much that people,
really is.
Yeah. And even the people that come in that you connect with from outside, it feels like you've met them for a long time just because of the experiences that you've covered over a short period of time too. So that's a really, really great point that you mentioned there. I'll definitely try that because I'm a traveler. I just wish that I could travel some more, but until the world opens up again, definitely I'm going to be trying to take that excursion as well. And it's really refreshing.
Next time you travel, it's like stay in an Airbnb where you have to go to the market, or at least a local restaurant that isn't at your hotel. Those little things are eye-openers, and I think it's so important to see what a culture looks like, and you staying in an all-inclusive somewhere doesn't give you an insight into what the world looks like outside of there.
Exactly. It's all aesthetics. Yeah, most definitely. And last but not least, this is something that I really wanted to ask you, because this is something I've been trying to do. I think it's on my checklist, or when you have a dream or you have a goal and you're like, I want to do this by the time I'm 35. I want to do this by the time I'm 40. I've always wanted to have a TEDx talk. I've always wanted to be in that space and actually speak my truth and, be of value to someone that could actually hear my story. So could you able to tell us just a little bit about how you got into that space and what you spoke about, and how you actually even got to that space? Because everybody, I'm sure, is mostly thinking, hey, I wish I could do this too. So for you to have gone through that process, experienced it, and learned through it, how can someone like me or whoever's listening go through that journey and actually feel the same way about what they're feeling?
So I worked at a co-working space, and a gentleman who worked in my space had seen me present before and said, hey, we're doing this TEDx talk. I would really like you to do one. And of course, you're intimidated, because if you've ever watched a TED talk, they're all superior speakers, and it's very intimidating. I was like, oh, never say no. So why not? Let's just do it. Sure, I'll do it. And so he helped me work through the content itself. And that's what they all do. They all give you someone to help you work through your content, which it makes everyone successful and make everyone confident. So I talked about how to make sports your secret weapon. And, I injected in humor into it, because I fully believe humor is the only way to learn. And so it was a lot of fun, and it was very intimidating. But it was a lot of fun. And people talked from everything from the science of a smile to addiction to the secret, you're making sports your secret weapon. There was a little bit of everything in there, which was really great. And so for someone who's interested in doing it, they're always looking for speakers. There's local chapters in your area. They're everywhere. I mean, if you're in a small town, there's probably one as well. The universities have them. So a lot of universities have a TED Talk chapter, or an arm, if you will.
Okay.
And those exist there. You can apply, go and attend, and get to know the people who run it. There's a huge opportunity there to do that. And they're always looking for speakers. And just because you're passionate about butterflies doesn't mean you're not interesting. That passion is interesting to someone else. You can make that passion about butterflies fascinating to an audience. And it's a short talk. So you pull out all the stops on the stuff that is really interesting and will be attention grabbers for people. And there you have it. It's something that the beauty of it is because it's something you're comfortable with it up there. You're not giving a speech about the Gettysburg Address. You're giving a speech about something that So I would encourage you to get to know people in your local market and really look into that. And as we come back, I'm sure that those will be the first things to come back. because people want to hear from great speakers and hear about interesting things. And the big thing I would say too is make sure it's truly holistic. You know, I went in there being a sports person, talking about sports, but I wasn't there to pitch my company, and that's what they really don't want you to do. So if you want to go in there and talk about the McDonald's you own, take that spin a totally a bit differently. Take that into, you want to talk about customer satisfaction, or why 3 shakes of salt on the French fries is the perfect amount of salt.
Right.
That's something quirky that would go over really well with a TED Talk. And so as you think about what that topic looks like that you would like to present on, think about something like that is truly an attention grabber that people would be interested in. That's
a great point you mentioned there. Thank you so much. That has really, really enlightened me a lot, because now I'm able to. Thank you. I really appreciate it. If there's any way someone wants to reach out to you or connect with you, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, sure. So we're on social at Last Night's Game. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. So you can always reach out to us there via DM. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you just shoot me an email. I'm at amy@lastnightsgame.com. So I welcome any feedback. I also just welcome, I have people all the time just send me a note about career advice or direction. That's what I'm here for. I think we all are part of what it takes to make this world go round, and we're all cogs in that wheel. So if I can help somebody, please send me a note. We would love it. So absolutely.
Awesome.
Oh, and we're at lastnightsgame.com. I should probably say that too.
Oh, yeah. Don't forget lastnightsgame.com for sure. Thank you so much, Amy, for being here. It was a pleasure having you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a joy. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.